longtime top financial officer of Donald Trump's company, Alan Weisselberg, did it again, pleaded guilty to felony perjury charges in a Manhattan courtroom earlier today. He admitted that he lied in sworn testimony when asked about allegations that Trump lied about his wealth during the ex-president's civil fraud trial. This is now Weisselberg's second guilty plea. In 2022, he pleaded guilty to multiple tax fraud charges and served 3 months at Rikers. Today's guilty plea will put him behind bars again for up to 5 months. These new charges come just weeks before the ex-president is set to face trial on separate allegations that he falsified business records. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg's criminal case. The New York Times lays out the implications of today's developments for that case, writing this, quote, Monday's guilty plea could strengthen Mr. Bragg's hand heading into trial.
Okay, so let me start by telling you about something absolutely explosive that just happened inside a New York courtroom. And it goes straight to the core of everything Trump has been claiming about himself for decades. His own chief financial officer, the man who knew exactly where every secret was buried, who managed the books, who understood every single financial detail of Trump's entire business empire, just stood up in court and admitted that he lied under oath to protect Trump. Alan Weisselberg pleaded guilty to perjury. He literally confessed that he committed a crime by lying on the witness stand about Trump's inflated financial statements. And now legal experts are asking the question that is completely obvious at this point. If Trump's own CFO was lying under oath to protect him, what does that tell us about Trump's own testimony?
Explain the Times reporting today about how this strengthens Alvin Bragg's hands ahead of a criminal trial.
Well, I think there's probably two components to that. One is Alan Weisselberg, moving forward with his perjury charge really does send a message, a very loud one. It's actions, not words, that to other witnesses that you better not do this. And so I think that's one thing. And I think going in, Alan Weisselberg knows a lot about the hush money payment. We know that he had discussions with Michael Cohen, who's another key witness in the case, about how to structure this payment so that it didn't look like what it was. And Alan Weisselberg has been an uncooperative witness. So I think if they couldn't get him to cooperate, they want to discredit him.
In March 2024, Alan Weisselberg, Trump's longtime chief financial officer, a man who worked for the Trump Organization for decades, walked into a New York courtroom and pleaded guilty to 2 counts of perjury. He admitted that he lied under oath about Trump's inflated asset values. He admitted that he lied on the witness stand during Trump's civil fraud trial about financial statements that were used to deceive banks and insurance companies. This is Trump's own money man confessing that he committed crimes by lying in court, all to make Trump appear wealthier than he actually was. That is not speculation. That is not a political attack. That is a guilty plea entered in open court. And Weisselberg agreed to serve 5 months in jail for that perjury. 5 months behind bars because he lied under oath about Trump's finances. Now, here's the part that should really make you stop and pay attention. Weisselberg did not do this for his own benefit. He lied to protect Trump's inflated wealth story. He lied to boost Trump's image and his ability to borrow money from banks. He lied because that is apparently what was expected of you if you wanted to stay inside Trump's inner circle. The entire culture surrounding Trump was so deeply built around maintaining this fiction about how rich he was that his own CFO committed actual crimes just to keep that story alive. Now let's talk about Trump himself, because this is where things get really interesting and potentially devastating for him personally. Legal analysts have been going back through Trump's entire history under oath, every deposition, every piece of trial testimony, every sworn statement he has ever made, and they keep finding the exact same pattern. Trump says things under oath that do not line up with the documents. Trump makes claims about his wealth, his business deals, and his knowledge of key facts that directly contradict what the actual records show. Judges have openly questioned whether he is being truthful. Fact checkers have cataloged the contradictions one by one. And now his own CFO has admitted on the record that lying under oath about Trump's finances was essentially part of the job description. The perjury exposure Trump is now facing is serious, and unlike some of the other charges surrounding him, this one is simple for anyone to understand. Perjury means you lied under oath. that is it. You raised your right hand, you swore to tell the truth, and then you did not tell the truth. If prosecutors can prove that Trump knowingly gave false testimony in any of these proceedings, he could be facing criminal charges that come with real prison time. Not just fines, not just civil penalties, actual years behind bars. And with Weisselberg already having pleaded guilty to perjury for lies he told specifically to protect Trump, the precedent has been set. The door is wide open. This story cuts directly at one of Trump's most powerful political assets, his brand as someone who tells it like it is. His supporters genuinely believe Trump is honest with them, even when he is being crude, offensive, or politically incorrect. But what we are watching play out in these courtrooms tells a very different story. We are seeing a culture of lying under oath that was built up around Trump's financial empire. We are seeing his closest associates admit that they committed crimes by giving false testimony. We are seeing judges openly express doubt about whether Trump's own sworn statements can actually be trusted. The man who has built his entire public image around always telling it like it is apparently ran an organization where lying in court was just standard operating procedure. And this is the story that explains so much about why Trump's legal problems keep growing and multiplying. It is not just that he is facing charges on multiple fronts, it is that the very foundation of his entire public image, his claimed wealth, his business success, his reputation for straight-talking authenticity, may be built entirely on testimony that collapses the moment anyone looks at it closely. Let's break down exactly what all of this means. To really understand what is happening here, we need to go deep on the Weisselberg situation because it tells you everything about how Trump's organization actually operated and why his legal exposure is as serious as it is. Alan Weisselberg was not some low-level employee who happened to get caught in a lie. He was the chief financial officer of the Trump organization for decades. He knew every single detail of Trump's finances inside and out. He prepared the financial statements. He worked on the tax returns. If there was anyone in Trump's entire world who truly understood the real truth about his wealth and his business dealings, it was Alan Weisselberg. And that man just stood up in court and admitted that he committed perjury to protect Trump. Let me walk you through exactly what Weisselberg actually pleaded guilty to because the details are damning. He admitted to 2 counts of perjury connected to Trump's New York civil fraud case. Specifically, he admitted that he lied under oath about Trump's inflated asset values, the financial statements Trump used to make himself look far wealthier than he actually was, so he could secure better terms from banks and insurance companies. Weisselberg also admitted that he lied directly on the witness stand during Trump's civil fraud trial itself. So this was not some deposition lie that happened years ago behind closed doors. This was Weisselberg walking up to that stand during an active, ongoing trial and lying to the court about the very financial statements sitting at the center of the entire case. The agreement required Weisselberg to serve 5 months in jail, actual prison time for perjury. And keep in mind, this was the second time Weisselberg faced criminal consequences for work he did at the Trump organization. He had previously pleaded guilty to tax fraud charges and already served time for that as well. So Trump's longtime CFO has now been convicted of crimes twice, and both times the conduct was directly tied to his work for Trump. At some point, you have to stop and ask yourself what kind of organization consistently produces employees who keep committing crimes just in the course of doing their jobs? The perjury Weisselberg admitted to was directly connected to efforts to pump up Trump's image and his borrowing power. Let me explain what that actually means in real, practical terms. Trump's entire financial identity is built on the claim that he is incredibly wealthy, a billionaire many times over, one of the richest people in the country. But that image of wealth is not just about ego, though there is certainly plenty of that. It is the actual foundation of his business model. When Trump goes to banks looking to borrow money or to insurance companies looking for coverage, his perceived level of wealth directly affects the terms he gets. Wealthier people get lower interest rates. More valuable properties get better insurance deals. So there is an enormous financial incentive to make yourself look as rich as possible on paper. What prosecutors laid out in the civil fraud case and what Weisselberg's perjury plea now confirms is that Trump's organization systematically inflated his asset values on financial statements. They claimed properties were worth far more than they actually were. They made statements about the size and value of assets that simply did not match reality. And when they got called out on it in court, Weisselberg lied under oath to try to keep the cover-up going. He committed a crime perjury specifically to protect the fiction that Trump was as wealthy as he always claimed to be. That is not spin. That is not interpretation. That is what he admitted to when he entered his guilty plea. Now let's talk about Trump's own testimony, because this is where the story gets even more explosive. Legal analysts and investigative journalists have done deep, thorough examinations of Trump's history of sworn testimony going back decades. And the pattern they found is remarkable. Over and over again, Trump makes claims under oath that turn out to be false or seriously misleading when placed side by side with actual documents and evidence. He overstates his wealth, he downplays his knowledge of questionable dealings, he contradicts things he said in previous depositions, he makes claims about business deals that do not match the written records at all. And this is not a one-time thing. It is not an occasional slip-up. It is a pattern that shows up repeatedly across multiple different legal proceedings over many years. Judges have noticed this pattern, and they have not been quiet about it. In various proceedings over the years, judges have openly questioned his credibility, pointed out clear discrepancies in his testimony, and imposed sanctions when they found he was playing games with the truth. The judge in the civil fraud case found that Trump and his organization had engaged in persistent fraud. That was not specifically a finding of perjury, but it was a finding that the financial statements at the center of the entire case were deliberately misleading. And when your CFO then pleads guilty to lying under oath about those very same financial statements, the picture starts to come into very sharp focus. The legal exposure here is serious, and I want to make sure everyone understands exactly what perjury means as a potential criminal charge. Perjury is a felony in both federal and state courts. If you are convicted of perjury, you can face years in prison, not months, years. Unlike some charges that might result in fines or probation, perjury is treated with the utmost seriousness because it strikes at the foundation of the entire legal system. Courts simply cannot function if people lie under oath. Judges cannot make fair and just decisions if the witnesses in front of them are not telling the truth. So when prosecutors go after perjury, they are not just punishing one specific lie, they are defending the integrity of sworn testimony itself. For Trump personally, the perjury question creates a very specific and unique kind of danger. His other legal problems, the federal cases, the state indictments, even the New York conviction, all involve complex legal questions about intent, about official acts, about what exactly crosses the line into criminal conduct. Skilled lawyers can argue about those things endlessly, but perjury is clean and straightforward. Either you told the truth under oath or you did not. Either your sworn statements line up with the documentary evidence or they do not. There is very little room for creative legal maneuvering when you are caught in a clear, documented lie made under oath. The culture of lying that Weisselberg's guilty plea reveals is also critically important for understanding the bigger picture around Trump. This was not one rogue employee going off on his own and deciding to commit perjury. This was the CFO, one of the most senior and trusted people in the entire organization, lying under oath specifically to protect Trump's inflated story about his own wealth. That strongly suggests the lying was not some isolated incident. It was a feature of how that organization ran on a daily basis. If the CFO felt comfortable enough to commit perjury in open court just to boost Trump's image, what does that tell you about the culture inside that organization? What does it tell you about what Trump expected from the people at the top? Legal experts have been warning for some time now that if prosecutors decide to seriously pursue perjury charges against Trump himself, based on his own sworn testimony, they would have more than enough material to work with. Please double-check responses. The depositions where he directly contradicted documents, the trial testimony where he made claims that did not match the evidence, the repeated pattern of overstating his wealth and downplaying his knowledge of problematic conduct, all of it is sitting right there in court records ready to be used. The only question is whether prosecutors decide to go there and whether they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump knowingly lied rather than simply being mistaken or prone to exaggeration. The way this connects to Trump's other legal problems makes it even more significant. He is already a convicted felon from the New York hush money case. He is still facing ongoing appeals and potential exposure across multiple other legal matters. And now his own CFO has pleaded guilty to perjury. The walls are closing in from every direction. And sitting at the center of all of it is one fundamental question: can anything Trump says under oath actually be trusted? When you have a defendant whose own CFO openly admits he committed crimes by lying in court specifically to protect his boss, you are dealing with something that goes far beyond ordinary legal trouble. You are dealing with a deep, fundamental credibility problem that casts a shadow over everything. All right, so let's pull all of this together and talk about what it actually means for Trump going forward, because the perjury situation creates a very specific kind of danger that is different from everything else he is facing. With Weisselberg's guilty plea, we now have definitive court-confirmed proof that people inside Trump's inner circle were committing crimes by lying under oath to protect his financial image. That is no longer an allegation. That is a conviction on the record. And it raises the question that prosecutors and the public are increasingly and openly asking if the CFO was lying under oath about Trump's finances. Was Trump lying too? The thing about perjury that makes it so uniquely dangerous for Trump is how simple it is. You can try to explain away complicated financial transactions. You can argue endlessly about what counts as an official act versus a personal one. You can build legal arguments around intent and knowledge and all the other complexities that criminal defense lawyers rely on to create reasonable doubt. But perjury cuts straight through all of that noise. You either told the truth under oath or you did not. You either said things that line up with the documents or you said things that contradict them. When prosecutors have a clear, documented record of what someone said under oath, and clear documentary evidence that directly contradicts it, there is very little room left to maneuver. Trump's lawyers will obviously argue that any discrepancies in his testimony were innocent mistakes rather than deliberate lies. They will say he, please double-check responses, genuinely believed what he was saying, even if it turned out to be wrong. They will argue that exaggerating is not the same thing as committing perjury. These are legitimate legal defenses, and prosecutors would have to work hard to overcome them in order to secure a conviction. But the pattern matters here. When you see the same kinds of false statements showing up over and over again, and they are always pointing in the same direction, always making Trump look richer or more innocent, it becomes very difficult to keep claiming these were just honest mistakes. And when your own CFO has already admitted he lied about those exact same financial statements, it seriously undermines any argument that everyone involved was simply acting in good faith. The culture of lying under oath that has been exposed through these cases should concern every single person, regardless of where they stand politically. Courts depend entirely on truthful testimony to function properly. When witnesses lie under oath, judges cannot make fair decisions. When powerful people face zero consequences for giving false testimony, it sends a clear message to everyone that the rules do not apply equally to the powerful. Weisselberg going to jail for perjury matters because it shows that there are real consequences. But the far bigger question is whether those consequences will ever reach Trump himself, or whether he will keep walking away while the people around him take the fall on his behalf. Here is what I think happens from this point forward. The perjury cloud hanging over Trump is going to keep growing. Prosecutors now have Weisselberg's cooperation and his testimony. They have years of documented sworn statements from Trump himself. They have the pattern evidence showing repeated, consistent discrepancies. Whether they actually decide to bring formal perjury charges against Trump comes down to a number of factors: legal strategy, political considerations, and the strength of specific evidence. But the foundation for those charges is clearly there, and it gets stronger with every guilty plea that comes from someone in Trump's circle. The political fallout from all of this is enormous. Trump has built his entire public brand on being a straight-talking truth teller, someone who says what everyone else is too afraid to say. His supporters believe he is authentic. They believe he is honest with them, even when he is being controversial. But what the court record actually shows is something completely different. It shows an organization where lying under oath was so normal, so routine, that the CFO did it without hesitation as a matter of course. It shows a long, documented pattern of sworn testimony that does not match the actual documentary evidence. It shows judges openly questioning Trump's credibility and expressing clear skepticism about whether he is telling the truth. The tell it like it is guy apparently cannot tell it like it is when he is under oath. And this story connects directly to all of Trump's other legal problems in very important ways. The 34 felony convictions in New York, the federal evidence that Jack Smith says proves criminal conduct beyond a reasonable doubt, the impeachment threats waiting in the wings if Democrats take back Congress. All of these things are made significantly worse by the perjury exposure. A defendant with a serious credibility problem is a defendant who is far harder to defend in court. A president whose own CFO admitted to lying under oath specifically to protect him is a president whose word simply cannot be trusted in any legal proceeding. The perjury situation is not just another legal problem added to a long list. It is the thread that ties every single one of the other problems together. The next few months are going to be critical for watching how all of this develops. Will prosecutors decide to pursue perjury charges directly against Trump himself? Will more people from his inner circle come forward and plead guilty to lying under oath? Will judges start making formal, on-the-record findings about Trump's credibility in the proceedings still underway? All of these things could realistically happen, and any one of them would dramatically escalate his legal exposure. The perjury cloud is not going away. If anything, it is getting darker and more threatening with every new piece of evidence that comes out and every associate that admits to their crimes. Stay tuned because this story is far from over, and we are going to be right here covering every single development as it happens at Pump Politics. The lying under oath issue goes straight to the heart of whether Trump can be trusted in any legal setting, and it has consequences for everything else he is currently facing. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that subscribe button and join our community so you never miss an update on Trump's legal situation and the perjury exposure that keeps growing. We will see you in the next one.